What is up? What is going on, everybody? Welcome back and welcome in to the second edition. I'm going to call it the Jay and Sir podcast. If you guys have any other fun names, let us know. We're willing to listen to it. But this is our second Mariners weekly recap. You guys should be watching this Monday morning. Grab your coffee, your bagel, your donut, sit back, relax, and let us break down the week that was in Mariners baseball. Before I dive into, as always, do me a favor, hit that like button and hit subscribe if you are new. It was a tremendous week for the Seattle Mariners. They go 4-2 against two pretty good teams, the Atlanta Braves, that pound for pound for me are the best team in baseball, and an Astros team that isn't playing well, but until I see that little E by their name, I will not count them out. And as always, MarinersSUR is joining me for the weekly recap. If you guys have not followed him on Twitter, link will be in the description down below. You absolutely should. If you're looking for someone that has well-balanced, non-reactionary takes, which I try to pride myself on as well, but someone that probably knows the data about 100 times better than I do, you absolutely need to be following him on Twitter. How you doing this week, my friend?
Doing well. It was a good week for the Mariners, so that always helps. But doing well.
Good. Yeah, great week for the Mariners. We'll start out with the Houston Astros series. We'll work our way back a little bit since that's what's fresh in everybody's mind. The Mariners take 2 out of 3 from the Houston Astros. A little bit of a struggle game 1, game 2, dominance from Logan Gilbert, and game 3, a little bit of a roller coaster, but they find a way to pull it out. What stood out for you the most in terms of positive performances from this series?
Yeah, I think getting those 2 wins was huge. I know last week on the pod, I mentioned this series. I was looking forward to it because they had beat the Rockies twice. And you figure the Astros are going to go on a run at some point. It's inevitable. They got a great team. They've been swinging it well. The bullpen, they've been struggling, but they have, names that have been there and done it year over year. So I think just getting the 2 wins was huge because they ended up taking 2 or 3 from the Guardians. So they come in winning 4 or 5, right? So they're kind of starting to roll. They take game 1 from us and really kind of a gut wrenching fashion. So getting 2 wins, I think, is the biggest takeaway. I think after that, it's the pitching holding up once again in a park that's very favorable for hitters for the most part. And so the fact that our rotation went in there and really didn't seem to drop miss a step is absolutely significant. And then, Josh Rojas continuing to swing it. We're getting close to 40 games, and he performed well last year, like we talked about once he got to Seattle. And so I'm to the point now where, you just kind of expect great things from him. Rojas pumping one out, Garver with a couple doubles. Luke Raley today with the home run is really good to see because his batting average has been creeping up over the past couple weeks. His strikeouts last year were an issue for him. He was over 30%. I think the last couple of weeks he's been around 26, 27%. So I've been kind of waiting to see if the power is going to merge. And, one home run doesn't mean that it's here, but that was a great thing to see him put one in the upper deck. So a couple things that stood out, I think, were on individual performance, a few of those guys, and then just getting 2 out of 3 and kind of putting a stop to their momentum is huge. And then obviously keeping our 6 series win streak rolling is also really great to see.
Yeah, I like kind of your point there with winning 2 out of 3 from Houston. I was with you. Like that they sweep Colorado. Colorado's not good, but they needed wins. They get a couple against the Rockies. They take 2 out of 3 with a couple gritty wins against what looks like a pretty good Guardians team. And you kind of felt maybe they're getting going. And then they win game 1, like you said. And I'm kind of sitting here, even though I'm like, okay, it's one game, not the end of the world. In the back of my mind, I'm like, boy, if Houston finds a way to sweep this series, you've kind of just awoken a bit of a sleeping giant and you let them right back in. Now, I think we're both in the same boat. We are not counting the Astros out by any means yet until they are officially done. But that was a big series, I think, for Houston to get with Seattle coming into town, a chance for them to really get some momentum, claw right back into this division. And I think a little bit of a gut punch for them to lose 2 out of 3. And then to your point as well with the hitters, I mean, we can't say enough about Josh Rojas, who is swinging the bat like an MVP so far this season. And I'm with you on Luke Raley. You can kind of see it the last few weeks. He's had better at bats. Early on, he looked lost. Like you couldn't even imagine what a Luke Raley hit looked like. But starting to make better contact. He's seeing the ball a little better. He's had a couple walks, his first couple walks of the year. And then, like you said, upper tank today. Great to see from Luke Raley because you want to get that power going. And then Cal Raleigh, a couple right-handed home runs as well, is good to see. So, and Luis Urias
Yeah.
continuing to stay hot, who's been a nice little addition. So, yeah, I'm with you. I think this was a real test this series with Houston starting to play. And even if they hadn't played better, they're just, you always worry about playing those teams because they're going to get hot at some point. Let's go back to game one a little bit. I don't want to harp on the game that the Mariners lost because we can throw that one away a little bit. They won the next two. But a little bit of a hot button topic with George Kirby being taken out after 6 innings. Now it came out that he's having a little bit of a knee issue. I tend to buy that. I think it's good to get him out while you can, especially early in the year. You don't want that to become an issue down the road. Did you have any issue with Kirby coming out there? You kind of with me and Scott on that's fine. He's banged up. You got to get him out and preserve him for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I think, in the moment I was wondering too, like, all right, 88 pitches. It seemed like he was moving along just fine. So I think in the moment was wondering, but even then it's like the bullpen's been so good that I didn't have a huge issue with it. So then when it came out after the game that, his knee has been bothering him a little bit, it made complete sense. And yeah, I didn't doubt it for a second because I know after that Colorado outing, Service mentioned he wasn't at 100%, which at the time was kind of concerning. Like, what are we talking about? Is it his arm or what's going on? So a little bit of a relief that it was knee. And then even I think today, even a bigger relief when they did an MRI and it sounds like they didn't really find anything. They'll kind of manage it with treatment, but they don't expect him to miss a start. So I think that's relief. But yeah, I mean, if his knee is bothering him, I mean, he's got to, you want him to make 32, 33 starts. It's just not the time to push that and have a minor issue, as it seems at the moment, turn into something larger. So no issues with it. And I think the bullpen 9 out of 10 times gets the job done. And then it's not really even a talking point. So unfortunate that it became that, but yeah, no really concerns.
Yeah, it turned itself into its own talking point, like you said, and the bullpen's been lights out. And even in that game, Gabe Spire just uncharacteristically loses command. It's going to happen. Every pitcher's going to have a bad outing. He just didn't have it. Trent Thornton, I didn't even think the walk to Pena with that first at bat was frustrating. I know you mentioned that on Twitter. I think he had Pena 1 and 2. Got to find a way to put him away there. That was frustrating, but Yainier Diaz comes up and hits the ball hard, but on the ground, what could have been an easy double play if it didn't hit Trent Thornton because Dylan Moore was right there behind the bag.
Mm-hmm.
And then Jonathan Singleton hits a grounder so softly that it essentially works as a bunt and moves the runners up. And then you get, even as much as Spire struggled, Altuve lays down a perfect bunt. So it was really just kind of a perfect storm of stuff that happened to the Mariners. But I'm with you. We're still in early May here. This one game, even if it would have resulted in a win or something, let's say Kirby stays in, shuts him down, but then there's a bigger knee issue and you win the game, but he misses a month. That's not worth it. I will trade that game. And that's not what they were doing. That wasn't their decision. They were trying to win the game, but I will trade that for George Kirby staying healthy the rest of the season. And especially after the Mariners win the next 2 games.
Yeah, no, completely agree.
Game 2, let's move on to happier stuff. We get a dominant performance from Logan Gilbert, 8 shutout innings, 6 strikeouts, does walk 4. Now, he's walked a couple guys his last couple starts, and I know the strikeouts weren't quite as high, but I think some of that was Houston was really aggressive, I thought, against Logan Gilbert yesterday, putting a lot of first balls in play. Was that kind of your takeaway from that as well?
Yeah, it definitely seemed like their game plan was that, this guy's got such good stuff, so many pitches he can go to that we're just going to try to get to him early in the count and see if we can make things happen. So, yeah, I mean, completely a dominant outing from Logan. And I think yesterday, and I feel like some of the Mariners kind of beat writers have talked about this, but very well could have been their most well-rounded game of the year, just considering that you're going against Framber Valdez and they had, pressure. I'm looking now 9 hits on him and 5 1/3. 5 runs. And so with Logan pitching that well, us putting that much pressure on Framber, I really thought it was maybe their best game played all year, considering just the level of competition they were up against.
100%. I talked about that yesterday in the post game. I thought it was their most complete win of the year. I think there might have been a game against the Reds, the Frankie Montas game that might have been up there as well. But I think pound for pound, when you take a look at the competition, I think that was their most well-rounded victory of the season. And they did pretty well. And actually against Valdez last couple of years, they've had some really good I don't know if they've like fully knocked him out of a game out of the box scores up. They've done a nice job driving up his pitch count. He's always looked very frustrated against the Mariners the last couple
Yep.
of years pitching. So that was great to see. You had Cal Raleigh went deep. And how about Luis Urias? Dead center field. You do not see a lot of home runs poked out to dead center field in Houston. What's been your take on Urias so far this season?
Yeah, I think he's been, interesting player. You look at, his average, right, is kind of where everybody's eyes goes initially. But when you dig past that, he's been very interesting to me. He's taking his walks. I think, I believe if I heard it correctly, he has 6 hits on the year, 3 are home runs and 3 are doubles. So it's all extra base hits. So he's been good in his defense. Today, a couple diving plays, his defense has been much improved. And I was happy to hear, and we're kind of at that point of the season where I feel like Scott, Jerry, and the Mariners, and I think a lot of teams are this way, that 30-40 game mark is where they're going to really start looking at kind of where the roster's at and starting to make little tweaks here and there. And it sounds like that's where they're going with Urias when they kind of mentioned getting Rojas out into left field to get Urias in against righties a little bit more. I think probably part of that too is just to pull back on Haniger's playing time a little bit. So I'm curious to see if with Urias getting a more consistent playing time, because he's never been like a huge strikeout guy, and he's over 30% this year. And if he can kind of rein that back in with how he's doing damage to the baseball, I think he could be a very, very interesting player moving forward here for the next, 130-ish games, how many we have left. So, yeah, he's been a productive player for us, no doubt.
Yeah, and I think you made a great point too. I think we're finally at that point, and I've talked about it, because people ask me, okay, when do you start really digging into the numbers? I'm like, usually a month. I give everybody a month, and then it's okay, where do we need to make adjustments? And I think you hit the nail on the head. I think you're starting to see Scott, Justin, and Jerry now. Okay, getting Urias and Rojas maybe a little more playing time. I think you'll see Rojas get some starts against the lefty here soon. I'm not expecting to play every day against lefties. I think part of the reason that Rojas has played so well is they have utilized him correctly. They're not overexposing him to left-handed pitching a ton. So I'm not up in arms that he hasn't played against them, but I do think they're going to start to do that. To your point, I think getting Mitch Haniger some more days off is pivotal. He had a nice game yesterday, hit some balls hard, had a solid line drive base hit. So that was good to see. But I think against a right-handed pitcher, if you can get Mitch a day off per series, I think that's got to be the goal. And now with Luke Raley heating up and Rojas showing he can play in the outfield, I think that's very, very possible.
Yeah, they definitely have options to do exactly the situation you just laid out.
And then before I dive into today's game a little bit with the Astros, actually, I will go ahead and dive into that first. I want to give some good takes on the offense I want to get into, but we'll dive into the final game of the series first, the one that just finished up. Obviously, listen, I think some frustrating moments. I know you were talking about on Twitter. It felt like the Mariners should have had that game broken open early. They had a chance to put up 5, 6, 7 runs, and they kind of allowed Hunter Brown to settle in a little bit. And not going to say he pitched well, but was able to, wiggle out of some trouble and settle in a little bit. So it looked like it was going to be a pretty frustrating game. Then Tucker and Singleton hit the 2 home runs, and here we go again. It's one of these games. And then a tremendous job by the offense against, 2 tough pitchers in Abreu and Hader. And we've talked about that before. Their ERAs and stuff don't look great. But if you look at the underlying numbers, Abreu and Hader have actually been pretty solid. They're not going to run whatever their ERAs are the rest of the year. What was your thoughts on today's game?
Yeah, it was frustrating. Even when we had a lead, it was frustrating. I know at one point I looked up and I think our 2, 3, 4, 5 hitters. So, the guys you think you'd want up in kind of high leverage situations. I think at one point they were like 0 for 7 with guys in scoring position with 5 strikeouts. So that's, it wasn't like it was the bottom of the order. And it was the guys you would expect to kind of come through more a reasonable time in those situations, and they didn't. So yeah, you kind of let them hang around, right? And then all of a sudden they take the lead. And like you said, with Abreu and Hader coming in, you don't feel good about your chances. But it put up 10 hits today. We had 10 yesterday. So that's back-to-back double digit hit games. Struck out 8 times today. I don't think we had a game. And this isn't a very high bar to clear, but it's just kind of what we've been seeing. They did not strike out double digits in any of the 3 games in this series, which is good. And then, yeah, took advantage, right? Abreu hits Dylan Moore in the 8th, box him over to second, and then Urias just kind of dinks one out in the second center field. So he basically put Demo on second for us, and Rios put the ball in play and made things happen. And then loved Raleigh's approach in the ninth. He basically said it in post game that I was looking for a fastball. He got me with two good sliders initially, but I wasn't going to change my approach. And good thing he didn't, because Hader kind of left one in a good spot to do damage on. And so love seeing that, right? If he would have went down swinging on the slider, it would have been frustrating, right, as a fan, but he stuck with his approach and was rewarded with essentially a game-winning home run. So just really good feel-good win, though, right, to get the series and be able to hop on a flight. It's just one of those ones that I think gives the team really good momentum.
Yeah, 100%. I couldn't agree more. I think when you win a game like that to finish a series, like you said, the food's going to taste a little better on the plane for this team. That they've got to feel good. You have got to feel great, especially the way they won to battle back. Like I said, the eighth inning, Dylan Moore is hit by the pitch. And I thought great base running by Dylan Moore on that Urias base hit as well. That was because he kind of had to go back at first because wasn't sure if it was going to get over the infield. And then to still score on that play was fantastic. And yeah, I mean, for Cal to get that 2-strike home run, which I thought was a terrible pitch by Hader, that thing was just right over the heart of the plate. But that's the difference, right? That's where the Astros, one of the reasons why they are 10 games under 500 right now. They're making those mistakes. And the Mariners are doing a good job of taking advantage of it when other teams are doing it. So, and then Andres Munoz closed it down the ninth. And I don't know, if you have the data on it or not, but I feel like Munoz's slider is back. It was a little flat last year, I thought, at least. And 2022 is one of the most lights out pitches imaginable. In 2023, I don't know. I just didn't think it had the same value. It didn't have the same bite. He kind of added that sinker a little bit last year. Now this year, the slider looks like it's back to 2022. Any thoughts on that, or any data you've got to maybe back that up, or am I just seeing things?
No, and I don't. I'll try to pull it up here. I won't take too long to look. Yeah, it's not quite back to where it was in 2022, which one of the best pitches in baseball, but it is better than last year. And I would even say, like, in looking at the lens of this year, and I don't have the data on this, but even early on in the year, it didn't seem like the slider had the bite, but in the last week or two, even, it's been there. So hopefully, and it seems like he's found something with that to kind of get that bite back on the slider. And when he has that, he's incredibly difficult to hit. And he's also, they haven't been afraid to use him for more than 3 outs this year. And it doesn't seem like that's been a huge issue for him too. So yeah, very, very happy to have Munoz at the back end of games to get out of jams and then close the door.
Yeah, especially this week in general, that the second game against the Braves where he gets the 5-out save, where his own fielding kind of lets him down on an error, and then he's able to battle back and get the outs. And then today, you talked about in the ninth that, a tough part of the order. I know it's the bottom of the Astros order, but Dubon's a sneaky player. And then who else did he get after Dubon? Was it Myers?
Yes. Yep.
Myers actually been a pretty good hitter this year. I think he's actually running reverse splits this year, better against lefties over his career. And then Altuve is always dangerous. Then if one of those guys gets on, you've got Tucker and Alvarez coming up. So a really nice ninth inning today to close the door for Andres Munoz. Any other thoughts on the Astros series that you've got that maybe I didn't mention that you wanted to bring up?
No, I just, feels good getting the win. Was happy to see the strikeouts come down a little bit, back-to-back double-digit hit games feels good. And then having the pitching keep rolling is great to see as well.
Yeah. And before we get into the Braves series, I want to mention something we talked about a little bit before we came on the show here. The Mariners, and this is credit to you for having the stat on Twitter, the Mariners are, if I'm not mistaken, 5th in WRC plus since the Cincinnati Reds series. Is that 5th is correct?
Yeah. And honestly, I was surprised. I was kind of looking at the numbers for this week. 101 doesn't include today's game, which it actually should tick up a little bit. I was just kind of curious how they've looked during this series win streak. And 113 WRC plus. A lot of it's driven, by home runs. So they are relying on the long ball quite a bit, which isn't a big issue, but they're 5th in home runs. But the offense has been surprisingly, I think, better than a lot of people expected, and myself included, over this stretch run. I think we were talking about this too. I think part of it is it's kind of hard to wrap your head around, and it's just offense is down against baseball. So you kind of, you watch the Mariners, it doesn't look good. But that's, I think, how most fans feel because offense is down. So when you look at it relative to other teams, they've actually done a solid job. And I think that the next step for them is not relying so much on the home run ball and getting some more of these singles and doubles. And if they can do that, I think they'll be in a pretty good spot with the offense, along with getting some of the key players going that we've kind of spoken about ad nauseum. So, yeah, excited to see kind of where it keeps going.
Yeah, and I think it's a fascinating number to see that because, and as fans too, we tend to kind of, obviously all of us and people watching this video, we're hyper focused on the Mariners. So every little thing that goes wrong, becomes we notice it more. Whereas other teams, you don't pay attention to little things as much. You just look at the big picture. So I think for us, we look at that and go, there's no way they've been the fifth best offense in baseball over the last month. But I think if you take a step back, it does make some sense to your point. I think they're drawing more walks. They're getting on base more. I think they've had a little bit of trouble, driving in the runs at times. I don't know the numbers with runners in scoring position off the top of my head. But even there, I think like even today is a good example. They have the bases loaded, nobody out in the second inning. It's frustrating because they score and then they still leave them loaded with nobody out. But you do get Urias working the walk. You do get Josh Rojas getting the base hit. Luke Raley adds on. Then you add on a couple runs later. So, and to your testament too, or to your point, excuse me, with offense being down, remember last week, like Mitch Haniger had like a 107 WRC plus, and I was kind of shocked. I'm like, well, offense is down kind of in general right now. So I think all in all, we're seeing this offense come alive in the last few weeks. It's got room to improve, and there's guys who want to see their numbers continue to grow, but it's starting to look like the offense, I think that we talked about it last week, can be 8 to 12th in WRC plus in baseball.
Yeah.
And it's also, like you said, and I think they're relying a lot on the home run. And I think the hope is, they're getting the bases loaded. Who's going to be the guy that puts the ball in the gap to just break a game open at some point? I still think they're missing that hit, but overall, I think the at-bats have been much, much better as opposed to the first 16 games of the year when a base runner seemed like a miracle.
Yeah, it's been night and day difference from then for sure.
Exactly. All right, we're going to go ahead and hop into the Atlanta Braves series a little bit. We'll go back earlier in the week, then we'll probably go ahead and wrap it up. I think next week I might do like a little Q&A, get the fans involved, see if they've got any questions for us as well. But going back to the Atlanta Braves series, another great series for the Mariners that they took 2 out of 3. Now, I want to hear a little bit because I believe you were at the Mitch Garver walk-off game. Take me a little bit through that and that experience being there because that was that was fun.
Yeah, that was a great game to attend. Sometimes when you go to these, pitching duels, they can feel a little bit dull, but Fried and Bryce Miller were both just on their games. I mean, it was a ton of fun to watch. And it might be because Miller had like a perfect game going into the 6th and Fried with his no-hitter. So that adds kind of a little bit of an element to it. But tremendous game. And yeah, and then in the 9th, I was actually sitting right above the Braves dugout, and Garver's walk-off home run went like right above the facade above me. So a very cool vantage point. And not proud of this, but when Minter was going in from the bullpen to the game, I just gave him a little bit of words of encouragement, let him not to let up a walk-off home run. Of course, right? No bad intention there. Just trying to remind him what his job is. And I guess it worked if you're a Mariners fan, but yeah, I mean, it's, like today, it was great for them to come back from behind late in a game. And you always need some of those in a season, right? They're not always going to be easy. And so and for Garver to have that too, to hopefully kind of get him going. But yeah, a blast of a game to be at and a great inning.
Yeah, no, that's the type of game that you remember being at, just because that's a win that if this team goes far this year, we'll look back on it like the Gino and Julio home runs against the Braves 2 years ago. You just will not forget that moment in the season. And nice job getting Minter a little psyched. Yeah, we'll say he had a little something to do with it. You never know. Maybe got in his head just enough before that 9th inning there and threw that little bit of a nice flat cutter to Mitch Garver. And that game's just a perfect example, I think, of not giving up in baseball because it was such a frustrating game. Max Fried's great. So I wasn't probably as frustrated as maybe some people. Like the Braves are just not a team your offense is going to get right against, and truthfully, the pitching the Mariners have faced the last few weeks, even in this Houston series, you face some really good starting pitching that it's just hard to get your offense clicking against. And as much as I was frustrated in those late innings of that game, it was still just 1-0. you were still that bloop and a blast away from winning it. And sure enough, they went ahead and got it. Then game two, you get the Luis Castillo dominance. And I probably should be talking about it more in this show. The starting pitching. I mean, just, I know the streak was broken today of 21 consecutive starts of 2 earned runs or less. Even today, I thought Bryce Miller threw the ball well. A couple bad pitches to Tucker and Singleton. But I mean, what's been your thoughts on this pitching? This is a run we haven't seen since, the early 1900s in baseball.
Yeah, I know it's incredible. And it's to the point now, to your point, we probably are taking it a little bit for granted because it's night after night and you almost forget what a bad start looks like. But like you said, it's one that now is, when they talk about good pitching streaks, it's going to be one mentioned as an all-timer. So we'll see if they can get another one going. Like you said, Miller lost a streak today in the 7th inning, but still threw the ball very, very well. So, I mean, yeah, I'm glad we have the staff what we do because it makes a ton of fun to watch, game after game.
Yeah, it's really just been like you said, and I've kind of taken it for granted. I haven't even brought it up in this show yet with how good the rotation's been. We just kind of expect it, and it kind of makes a start like today for Miller, where I was sitting there doing my post game, and I'm like, oh, Miller struggled. I'm like, no, he really didn't. He took a shutout into the 6th inning. He was fine. A little tough finish for him, but still threw the ball really well. The only start I think in that run that maybe gets a little misread was Hancock against the Braves. I didn't think was all that great. I know we had the error, but I don't know if I'd necessarily put that as, 21 straight starts of 2 earned runs or less, but still a tremendous run. I know we didn't talk about this much before we were coming on, but I just thought about it now. Brian Wu, do you think he's ready to come up next start? Do you think they do that in Minnesota? Do you think they give Hancock one more go here and bring Wu back for Oakland? What's your thoughts on that?
I think what they'll do is I think Hancock will definitely take his next turn. I think if he wasn't going to, they either would have sent him down after his last start or after Wu threw, I think, yesterday. So the fact he's still, I think, means he's going to take his next turn. I think Wu will probably throw against Minnesota Wednesday or Thursday. And I think probably some of the thought processes, I think you have 13 games in 13 days. You've got kind of Kirby dealing with this knee issue. The pitchers have been going late into games. And so they'll basically do, I'm guessing what they'll do is a 6-man rotation, kind of one turn through.
Yeah.
If I had to guess, I think Hancock will probably go down to Tacoma after his next start. And then they'll be able to carry an extra reliever until Wu makes his, which will maybe be for, I don't know, one or 2 games. But yeah, I think 5 innings shutout baseball in his last rehab start in Tacoma. I think he got up to like 65 pitches. So he should be able to come up, throw, 5-6 innings, 85 pitches. So yeah, I think he's definitely ready to go. He's been very, very effective. I haven't, paid a ton of attention, but his numbers look really good. I know his velocity was topping out at 96 yesterday. So I don't think he's touched out in his prior one. So it looked like he was kind of letting it go a little bit more. So yeah, it'll be great to have Wu back, but Hancock did a good job in his absence. And I'm sure we'll see him again at some point, whether it's, hopefully not an injury. There'll probably be another long stretch of games where they'll plug him in just to give guys an extra day if they need as well.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a great thought for the Mariners too. You can kind of use that extra bullpen guy, you know what I mean? And then you have Wu pitch the last game, maybe the series, and you can kind of push back everybody a little bit. And like you said, you're playing 13 games in 13 days. So you can get everybody kind of one extra day. I think that's a really good idea. And to Brian Wu, I don't think he walked a batter in any of his rehab starts in Tacoma. From what I saw, and I'm with you, I didn't watch like the whole game or anything, but looked really, really dominant. And yeah, I think Emerson Hancock showed that, I listen, for a first round pick. I don't view him as a top of the rotation guy or anything, but he's certainly more than capable if you have to, and hopefully this doesn't happen. Let's say, Logan's got some fatigue. He's got to miss 3 starts. Emerson Hancock can come up and you don't feel like you're throwing these games away at all. You feel like he can give you 5, 6 solid innings. Do you have any debate? Do you think, I'm pretty much like it's Brian Wu's spot in the rotation. I have no hesitation sending Hancock down and giving Wu the spot. Do you have any takes on that, or are you with me there that it's Brian Wu's spot in the rotation?
Yeah, I think it's Wu's spot. He was so good last year. His ERA, I don't know, it was in the 4s maybe, but if you look at like his Savant page, it was elite. And so it's Hancock didn't do anything wrong. He just happens to be in an organization where they have 5 outstanding starters. So yeah, I think it's Wu's spot, and I think he'll take it and run with it.
Yeah, it's funny with Hancock, and I know his FIP's in the 5, so, like, some of the underlying numbers aren't great, but I do wonder if we were, like, the White Sox or something like that, or I don't know, just a team that's starved for pitching, we'd probably be talking Emerson Hancock up as one of the next big arms, but he's just
Yeah.
unfortunately, kinda like you said, stuck in an organization that has 5 guys that are I mean, and Bryce Miller's taken a step forward this year, and to your point, you look at Wu Savant-Page last year, I mean, I was talking up Brian Wu being better than Bryce Miller, and I still think that's
Yeah.
possible. But it's just insane how good this rotation is, and to get a guy like Brian Wu back is going to be super, super exciting. And then you have Emerson Hancock as good depth down there. Mariners are going to get ready to take on the Minnesota Twins for a 4-game series this week. The Twins had won 11 in a row. They lost today to Boston. I won't have a series preview up, so the guys and gals take this as a little bit of your series preview. Thoughts on Minnesota in the upcoming series against them? It's not a team I'm super familiar with. I know a little bit about them, but do you have any takes on the Twins?
Yeah, I mean they're a good team. I think they're well rounded. Their lineups pretty dangerous 1 through 9. I don't remember what our record was against them last year, but I remember whenever we played them, it was
It's
very, very
tough.
tough. Just looking,
The last year, the
yeah,
Mariners
Royce
took
Lewis
2
this
out
year.
of
I'm
3
trying to
from
remember
them in
who's it. They
Minnesota.
had a lefty.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead and finish your thought. I was trying to
Okay.
look something
Yeah,
up
yeah.
too, and
Yeah, you're good. Last year, the Mariners took 2 out of 3 in Minnesota and split in Seattle, but they were all like just grinded out games. The second game in Minnesota was one where the Mariners got down like 5-0 and came back. It was the day after Colton Wong hit that big home run, and then the Mariners blew it in
that's
the
right.
ninth. And then game 3, the Mariners had a big lead in Minnesota, almost came back. And if I remember correctly, their lineup is lethal against right-handed pitching. They struggle against lefties, but they can pound right-handers. Now, the Mariners rotation is good enough to counteract that, but I remember that being a thing last year because they were a potential playoff team for the Mariners last year. And I remember just talking with people going, man, I would be nice to have like a Robbie Ray for this series if they played him.
Yeah, because looking for their top 6 hitters are lefties that they actually platoon, and they're all the stronger side of that platoon, or I mean the better, more effective hitters. The guy I was thinking of was Matt Wallner last year. I feel like hit a couple big home runs against us, but he's actually in AAA now. But yeah, they're just a well-rounded team. You don't want to be losing to them late. Duran he's nasty. You're not going to hit him. Griffin Jacks is a very, very good setup man. They have a couple other guys that are throwing really well. Pitching wise, so we face Woods Richardson to start, then Ober, Chris Paddock, Lopez. Lopez is their ace. The other 3 that we start with, I think have been decent. I think Richardson might actually have an ERA in the 2s. I don't know like what their underlying is, but I think there's a chance that they're not elite pitching, so maybe we can score some runs. And I think it's team. With our pitching, maybe you don't, but you probably do want to get some runs scored. But in all honesty, I think we're the better team. So if we play well, there's it's hard to go in and take 3 or 4 from a team like that, and really any team in general. So these 4-game series, you just really want to find a way to split, but it'll be a challenge. They're obviously playing very, very good baseball.
Yeah, that's me. I think you can go in there and split the series, and that's not to come across like, oh, I hope the Mariners sweep them. That would be amazing. But Minnesota's a good ball club. If you can go in there, especially with how well the Mariners have played the last few series, if you can come out of that with a split and you go 4-3 on this road trip, sign me up for that against Houston and Minnesota. That's, I know Houston's struggling now, but I think overall is a good team. And yeah, to your point with Minnesota, they're fairly well-rounded. There's not a lot of weaknesses. I think you can hit their starting pitching, but it's also not crazy if those guys all shut you down. They're all capable.
Right.
I trust our starting pitching to get their hitters out, but they also mash right-handed pitching. And it is more than possible that they get hot, and they've been hot, stay hot, and have a couple strong offensive performances. So I am glad they lost today. It's nice to kind of like, so maybe they're due for some losses after winning 11 out of 12. So not that really ties into it, but maybe that's something that can happen for that series, but it'll certainly be a battle. Last thing I want to bring up, then we'll go ahead and get out of here. If you have a couple more minutes.
Yeah, no, I'm good.
Perfect. I do want to talk. I feel like we closed out with this last week too. Do want to talk a little bit about Julio Rodriguez. Obviously polarizing, best player on the Mariners when he's going right. One thing that's been happening, I think we saw this last year too, but he is just being pounded inside with fastballs. And I'm not someone that's played a lot of baseball in my life. I'm not sure if you have or not, but any ideas how you combat that outside of like, dude, if they're a ball, just don't swing at it? Is there anything there that, adjustments that can be made, or is it just something he's going to have to lay off those pitches?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have enough knowledge on. I mean, I think where he really gets in trouble is when he starts expanding on the inside corner and he's doing. You could just tell kind of some of these early at bats that he's so eager to get a base hit. So he's just got to get, I think, pitchers back in the zone. And so this week, it looks like, not counting today, he 18% strikeout rate, so which was down for him. I just don't know if he hit a ton of balls hard though. So, but yeah, you're absolutely right. When teams pound him inside and he's offering at those, it seems like he really, really, really struggles. And I think last year it gave him a ton of ish. I remember it was like all season long. And then it was, I think, Carlos Hernandez against the Royals. It was like 97, 98 inside corner. He was able to pull it out for a big home run. So I don't know if there's adjustments that have to be made, but to me, it just seems more like swing decisions. And if it's not on the inside corner, just not offering. So I don't, you hope he figures it out, but it's been going on, I mean, almost a year or two of that now where that's been kind of the approach. And it seems like at times he kind of figures it out. And then at other times he reverts back and really struggles with it.
Yeah, even today, as frustrating as it was, he had a nice walk in the first inning where I think he spit on a few that were inside. And it's, to your point, you mentioned it's like he's come up in a lot of these bases loaded situations, which is great. I want Julio up in those situations despite some of the struggles. I'm still confident when he comes up, but I think he's just so eager to deliver that big hit. And, if you just slow down a little bit, you could have easily drawn a walk in that at bat. And listen, I'm saying this from here, I'd strike out every at bat in the big leagues. So I'm not trying to preach to any of the players here, but if you just lay off some of those, you're on base. And the more you lay off of them, the less you're going to see it. And listen, if I said in my post-game recap, if a pitcher just dots one on the corner, sometimes you just got to tip your cap and say, nothing I'm doing with that. If I swing at it, if it's a strike, it's a strike. We live to play another day a little bit. I will say this, like Julio's OPS after day 621, not that OPS is the best metric or anything. I'm pretty sure his outs above average on defense has been solid. He's still a productive player. Even if this is what you got, that's still an everyday baseball player. He's good enough defensively that, I'm trotting him out there every day, but it's just frustrating because, he was my pick for AL MVP. I'm going to assume he's probably in your, picks for that as well. And it's just frustrating that he hasn't gotten going. I was like, this is going to be the year where he gets off to the hot start. So I think it's just been frustrating for fans. I think we all feel he'll come out of it eventually.
Yeah. And hopefully, because I think for the Mariners to get to where they want to go, which is, AL West, win playoff games in a World Series, they need him to be a star player. And he just hasn't been that this year. To your point, he's been a productive player, but not the Julio kind of star that we all know he can be.
Exactly. He's been more Franklin Gutierrez light than he has Julio Rodriguez so far, which is still fine. I guess the good news is Mariners are 19-15 in first place, and their best player has been average so far. So, I guess that is the good news so far. So, well, I appreciate you as always for joining me for this weekly recap. If you guys have any fun names for the podcast that are appropriate, put it in the comments down below so we can get something cool going for it. We're going to have a monthly recap up. We'll get together, figure out when we're going to do that. We're really going to dive into the Savant pages and all that, really break this team down. But thank you again for coming on, man. Really enjoying doing this every week and your insights, man. Just truly appreciate all the work you do. So thanks again for joining me.
Yeah, no, it's been a blast. I appreciate you having me on here. Looking forward to the monthly recap and then next week as well.
Always. And, let me know, man. We can do some other videos together too. Always willing to do that. Thank you all for watching. Remember to hit that like button, hit subscribe. If you're not following MarinersSUR on Twitter, I don't know why not, because you're going to get some amazing insights. So follow him on Twitter, and we will see you guys all next week for another Mariners weekly recap, as we will talk about the Twins series, then a series against a very pesky Oakland A's team. That'll be interesting. Another team that don't trail them going into the ninth inning. That's all I'll say there. So have a great night, everybody, and I will see you guys all later. Take care and go Mariners.